I'd like to introduce the first book I wrote called 101 Choices on My Path to Well-Being and the thoughts that made them possible. Now, anytime we decide something, we are choosing a path, right? To divide, to decide, it speaks that there's always more than one option available. And there are options that bring about balance, that bring about wholeness, that bring about well-being, and there are options that take us backward into more chronic and unnecessary suffering. We all know that, and sometimes we know the options or the choices that are going to be good for us, meaning that they may take a little effort initially. There's often a balance between the highest long-term rewards and deferred gratification, meaning if you just spend every penny you have on lattes and ice cream cones and sneakers, you may not have the $1 million retirement account, right? But if you do have the $1 million retirement account, you may have to reduce short-term gratification in some ways, right? So there's often a balance of short and long-term. But we're all interested in feeling sustainably better. And when we have those options, how do we decide, how do we pick the one that's going to bring about the most long-term well-being, and why, right? So a decision has a thought process where we evaluate. And I would say the decision protocol is perhaps one of the most profound pieces of technology that we have and use as human beings. Meaning, if our protocol is, it doesn't feel good in the moment, so I'm not going to do it, right? That's base instinct. Or if our protocol is, I'm going to pause and listen to my intuition, which may or may not be instinct or fear or whatever, or may also be some sense of guidance. Or if our protocol is, I'm going to analyze the pros and cons based on the statistical probability, and I'm going to say, well, since 99% of people who go to Vegas come out of Vegas with less money, and 85% of people who invest in a home to live in, right, buying one's first house, come out with more money, statistically speaking. And so I'm going to just follow the statistics, right, and move towards well-being analytically. And so there's all numbers of, different manners of decisions. And then there are thoughts about why that's the right protocol to use. So the subtitle of this book is, and the thoughts that made them possible. And then there's an additional subtitle which says, choosing happiness over normalcy. Now, all of those elements are important in my eye, right? What is the thought process that would take us from an okay decision to a great decision? Does that make sense to us? Can we replicate that thought process, right? So that's one. Now, choosing happiness over normalcy is one of the most fundamental analysis in the entire process, right? Because normal is average, is medium, is mediocre. You never get exceptional results doing things the way the average person does things. It's a contradiction, right? You get exceptional, meaning you are different, except, right? 99% of the results are this, except this one result, which was this. It is the exceptional result, meaning it's not the norm. It's not the average, meaning you can never, it is impossible, it is irrational to pursue an exceptional life by behaving the way the majority of people behave. Right? So if you want to evolve, if you want to grow, if you want to move ahead of what? Right? Of the probability field. If you just want to be in the medium probability field or in the lower end or whatever, well, you just do exactly what you're doing, often defaulting to your cult or cultural memes. But if you want something different, if you want to accept, be exceptional, you've got to do things differently. But the question is, you know the norm, you know what you have been doing, and you know the results that it's been bringing, and you know what your culture has been doing, and the statistical results are there, right? You know that if you do things the way the culture outlines, you have a 20% chance of depression, right? You have a 50% chance of existential crisis. You have, I think it's maybe 25 or 30% chance of feeling suicidal as a teenager. Because if you do the things and think the things and feel the things that the cult has prescribed, those are the data points. That's the probability field. That's the crop that's harvested from those protocols. Now, when you deviate, when you become the exception of the norm, there's a risk because there's a change. You exit the probability field of your cult. Right? A cult is just defined by a group of people that do what they do, say what they say, think what they think, feel what they feel, be the way they are, just because everyone else is doing it. And they don't step out of the line because nobody else is, right? That's the cult, particularly when it does not make sense. Like if you say, like, do this, and there's a 30% chance you will be suicidal. I don't want a 30% chance of being suicidal. Is there another protocol that I can do within this cult? No, that's the way things are done. Do it, right? So, you know, it's you mean if I drink this Kool-Aid, right, there's a good chance I'm going to be dead, at least miserable. Yeah, but do it, right? That's what we do in the cult. So to transcend that, you need a different thought architecture. Not the same architecture, a different one. And when you deviate, when you decide between, in many cases, the norm and something exceptional, you need to have a relatively high chance of going up, right? Whatever your value hierarchy is, there's a up and down, right? If you value joy, then going up would be to have more joy. If you value health, then going up would be to be more healthy. So when you deviate from the norm, then relative to the norm, you're going to get different results. And they're either going to be better than average or worse than average. And when you deviate, it can go either way, right? And particularly when you're going into the unknown. To some extent, if you deviate from average, from what everyone else is doing, you are going into the unknown, which means there's an element of uncertainty. And so is that going to pay off, or is it going to, oh, I didn't realize there was that side effect? Right. So this is a really critical thing to, have a framework to ensure that as you deviate, you are going up rather than down relative to average. So I consider, and the thoughts that made these choices possible, to be in many ways more important than the choices, right? The discipline, the practice of analysis, because everyone's life is different and everyone's values are in a different order of priority. We all have the same values, but one person may value fun more than honesty. One person may value honesty more than fun. Same values. Everyone values fun and everyone values honesty, but one person would literally kill themselves rather than be dishonest. Another person would, lie at a drop of a hat if it brought about more fun. If it wasn't fun, they would be honest, right? They value honesty. It's just not as much, right? So, relative to one another, right? How do you create a decision framework? And so that's where the thoughts that made them possible, right? So this book maps out, my journey from a suicidal teen in a dysfunctional and traumatic household as a highly sensitive person with Aspergery tendencies to where I am today, right? And which were the thoughts that made all of those 100 choices possible, and what were many of the outcomes, right? So the content may or may not engage you, but understanding the thought processes could allow you to apply and develop a similar process to 5x your life in areas, or just to make, incremental choices in one area after another. So I hope you enjoy it, and thank you for your attention.